If you've watched some of my videos, you will see that I throw the terms awakened, awakening, consciousness, unconsciousness. But I haven't even made a video explaining what I mean when I say these things really. So let me dive in, right? What do I mean when I say I'm awakened, or when I had this awakening, or whatever? Right? My whole intention is not to make me seem like I'm more intelligent or above you, or I have something which you don't. What awakening is, at least to me, when I say it, is that it's the realization of I am aware of my mind, of my body, of my surroundings. And that I am essentially then not my body, my mind. Because if I'm able to be aware of my body, of my mind, of its thoughts, of its activity, of my emotions, then who's the one that's aware of these things? So then you realize that, holy shit, man. What I thought of myself as being a body and mind, and that's it, was just not true. And that this that I have found as myself being awareness, if you go into it deeply, it's timeless. So it's always been here, and it will always be here. It's indestructible. Nothing can touch it or harm it. It's a true miracle. Because how can we explain how we are aware, or how we are just conscious, or of consciousness itself? That is truly a miracle. And so most people are not awakened. And when I say this, it's because they haven't had that moment how I did a few years ago, where I recognized that I am simply just an occupant in this mind and body. So that when I look in the mirror, I'm looking at one of my outfits. I don't mean literally, as most people, when they go to their mirror and literally check their physical clothes on their body. I mean me as human. This is just one of my many outfits. And so, holy shit, I've always been here. And I've really thought all my life that I was born in 2002 and that this is me, and that when I die, it could be the end, probably is, until my family raised me as Muslim and there's heaven and hell. So I've got to be good in my life. So hopefully I can go to heaven, as if it's a place in the afterlife. But there was still always an element of fear, always at least in the back of my mind, no matter how far back, it was always there from my experiences. Because I don't care how religious, how practicing you are really, if you haven't had this breakthrough realization, that fear will always be in the back of your mind as well. Because you haven't experienced for yourself this awakening. Because this awakening means you realize you never die. And it's the ending of all fear. Because the ultimate fear is death. People are afraid of death. But in this one moment, death evaporates. There's no such thing as death. Only life. And so most people live in fear, whether they realize it or not, because they haven't had this awakening. People get depressed, people get anxious, because they haven't had this awakening. All negativity arises as a result of not realizing this. And how does it come? How can one realize this? How can one have a spiritual awakening? For me, it came through surrender in the midst of very painful self-created suffering. And it has, for many people who have got to that point, you could say almost like when you think a person is down and out and done and finished and dusted and dead, that they just resurrect from the ground and fly. Even when that person themselves think that they're finished. You could almost look at a spiritual awakening like that. That's how I have as well, myself at times. But for most people, it won't get to that point. And they won't have this awakening unless if they do like spiritual work for it, you could say. Which is, meditating for long periods of time, potentially it could take, and having to be conscious all the time. For me, I was trying to just be now, in the here and now, and present in the here and now, in the midst of a lot of my suffering. And it was because I was beating myself up of the past so much in my mind. So I just wanted to be in the here and now, because logically it makes sense. If I was more in the here and now, my mind would be less in the past. So that's what I did for a while. And then I just like realized, and some people may say that they have realized as well, but they haven't really had this awakening. But for me, I realized fully that the here and now is all there is. And that realization cuts through everything which is bound by time. Depression, anxiety, all negativity, all fear can only exist in time. On that note, we'll leave it there because my dog is going mental.